morning again, Year 11. So yesterday we started having a look at mood and atmosphere in A Christmas Carol. So it's the same questions as yesterday, but obviously you should be able to answer them a little bit more easily today because of the content that we covered in yesterday's session. So what mood is created at the beginning of A Christmas Carol? Can you identify a quotation to support this? And then can you explain what effect this quotation has on the reader? Give yourself 5 to 10 minutes to have a go at the do now, and then move on to the next slide. So today we're going to continue with our journey of mood and atmosphere throughout A Christmas Carol, and what I'm hoping we should be able to track is if there's a change in the mood and atmosphere that represents Scrooge's redemption. So here is an extract from Stave 2. You're going to need to read it independently. Then I would like you to highlight a quotation that you think shows the mood and atmosphere in this piece. Explain a key word in it. So is there something that stands out to you and makes you feel a certain way? And what are the connotations associated with your word? How can we link that back to Scrooge and his redemption? Okay, so hopefully you've had a go at this on your own first before watching this slide, and you've picked out some quotations for yourself. Here are two that I've picked out that I think are pretty good at showing us the mood and atmosphere in Stave 2 of the novella. So the first one I've picked out was "It was so dark." Okay, and the reason that I've picked this out is because I think it still represents that at this point the fog and darkness that was portrayed in Stave 1 is still present. So Scrooge at the moment isn't a redeemed character. Obviously he's had very little to do with the ghosts at this point. He's only just kind of had his first meeting with Jacob Marley. So actually at the moment it's pretty stagnant. The atmosphere is pretty much the same. If I was going to pick out a word, I'd look at dark. And again, I'd think about the connotations of it, you know, so kind of death, evilness, gloomy, no positivity. Those are all the connotations that the word dark has to me, and those are what I link to Scrooge at this point in the novella. And again, he was endeavouring to pierce the darkness. So essentially what it's saying is it's so dark that Scrooge can't see where he's going, which links back to the idea of the fog and the fact that obviously he's blind to everything, but also the idea that this darkness is just, you know, around him constantly and he's not able to escape it. Again, relating to the fact that at this point in the novella, he's not a redeemed character. He's not changed at all. The darkness that was with him in Stave 1 has still stayed throughout this stave also. And then this is an extract from Stave 3, and you're going to do exactly the same task on this one. So what mood and atmosphere is being created in the extract? Can you find a quotation that supports what you said? Is there any language feature in it? Can you pick out a key word, and can you analyse the connotations of that key word? Remembering, we're thinking about how the mood and atmosphere feeds into this redemption of Scrooge, if the mood and atmosphere changes in the same way that Scrooge's behaviour changes. Okay, again, so I'm hoping that you've had a go at this on your own first. It's really important to do that because obviously in any sort of examination that you might be set, I won't be there to tell you the answers. So here we have Stave 3, which is where I would say the mood and atmosphere seems to change a little bit. So Scrooge doesn't always focus on the darkness in Stave 3. He begins to notice the light. And I think that symbolises that he's beginning to change a little bit. So we've got this big bit here. So yet was there an air of cheerfulness abroad, the clearest summer air and brightest summer sun might have endeavoured to diffuse in vain. For the people who were shovelling away on the housetops were jovial and full of glee, calling out to one another from the parapets, and now and then exchanging a facetious snowball, better-natured missile far from many a wordy jest, laughing heartily if it went right, and not less heartily if it went wrong. Okay, and the idea is that, you know, even though it's cold and it's snowy outside, these people are making the best out of that situation because they're surrounded by the people that they love and the people they want to be with, and they're throwing snowballs at each other and they're having fun because it's about the people who are around you and not about what's happening, which is what Scrooge has been so kind of caught up on previously in the novella, isn't it? And again, keywords and phrases, thinking about jovial, full of glee. Those are the only sort of emotions that come from enjoying yourself and being a part of something which Scrooge has never experienced before. So I think Stave 3 is a pinnacle moment for it changing, and the mood and atmosphere definitely represents that, because we've gone from that fog and darkness that was in Stave 1 and Stave 2 to now jovialness and full of glee and clear summer air and bright summer sun. Okay, so that's Stave 3 for me. Okay, and we're going to do exactly the same for Stave 4. So here's an extract. What mood and atmosphere is created in this extract? Can you find a quotation to support that? Is there a language feature in it? Is there a key word you could pick out? can you analyse the connotations of that key word? So what you should have is a book full of exploded quotations at this point, because that's what I'm asking you to do. And again, make sure that you've had a go at this first of all before listening to my analysis. So stage 4, I think, is a little bit of an odd scene, because obviously, although we are seeing that Scrooge is beginning to change as a character, we have the introduction of the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, which is quite dark and mysterious, which might make us link back to the beginning of the novella. But actually, what I think it's important to recognise is that, so he's learnt his lesson in stage 3, the mood and atmosphere has changed, but what the ghosts don't want him to become is complacent. They don't want him to think that now that he's changed a little bit, that's enough. So they bring stage 4, the mood and atmosphere, back to the darkness to kind of emphasise this idea that actually you do need to change properly for this to work. So obviously when the phantom appears, it says, "For in the very air through which the spirit moved, it seems to scatter gloom and mystery." So it's not saying that gloom and mystery is everywhere around it, it's saying that it brings it with it. So actually the mood and atmosphere that we've just experienced in stage 4 hasn't completely disappeared, but this character is able to bring that with him. And we know that that's because he's a personification of death, and obviously the point is that he brings death and misery, essentially. And then also, but for this, it would have been difficult to detach its figure from the night and separate it from the darkness by which it was surrounded. So again, that darkness, it's not necessarily darkness as in evilness and people not being good. It's nighttime, which we expect darkness to be attached to, but it's the darkness that surrounds this creature, and that's what's, leading to this dark and ominous atmosphere. So although it's a bit confusing, because obviously we're trying to monitor the changing mood and atmosphere representing Scrooge, it just means that at this point in the novella, they wanted to emphasise the fact that this is his last chance to change, and if he isn't to change, then this is how the atmosphere will change. Whereas previously, in obviously stage 3, he was able to see what it might be like if he was able to change. That would be the way that I would rationalise it in my own mind anyway. And then one final stage 5 extract for you to have a look at. So again, thinking about what mood and atmosphere is created in this extract, can you pick out a quotation to support your point of view? Is there any language feature available? Can you pick out a keyword? And can you analyse any connotations to do with it? And then last off, we have stage 5, okay? And this is where we see the biggest change in mood and atmosphere. And if you were ever going to write about mood and atmosphere, I would always compare stage 1 to stage 5. But it is important to know about the in-between. So this one is a much happier atmosphere. Everything's brightened up. Scrooge is redeemed. He's a changed person. That's reflected in the weather. So bell, dong, ding, hammer, clang, clash. That's obviously a huge contrast to the bell peeping slyly down in stage 1. The idea is that now Scrooge is redeemed, God has forgiven him for all of his wrongs, and it's a much more positive outlook on his redemption. And then this list here, so no fog, no mist, clear, bright, jovial, stirring, cold piping for the blood to dance, golden sunlight, heavenly sky, sweet fresh air, merry bells. Again, a huge contrast from the fog and darkness that was thickening in stage 1, showing us that Scrooge's redemption hasn't only redeemed himself, but it's redeemed his view on life as well. Okay, so it's really important you've got notes on all of these. So the next task is a timeline where I want you to plot each of the key quotations you're going to remember through each one. And just as a note, this is going to lead to an essay. I've been very kind so far in not setting you essays. However, I still do need to build up an assessment picture, and I need to see what you're doing. So there is going to be an essay for this question, okay? But we'll talk about that more in detail next lesson. And you still do need to answer this Show My Homework quiz at the end of this.